What's going on, everyone? Thanks so much for tuning in to another episode of the Ducks Dish podcast. I'm your host, Max Torres with Scoop Duck on 3, coming to you on Saturday, August 23rd, 2025. Little special weekend edition of the pod for you guys today. Grab your coffee, grab some bacon and eggs, whatever you need. We're here to give you your Duck football fix. Week 0 style. Oregon doesn't start until next weekend when the Ducks play host to the Montana State Bobcats over there in beautiful Eugene, Oregon at Autzen Stadium. Not rolling solo today. I am so glad to be joined by a good friend of the show, one of my favorites on the Oregon beat, Tyson Alger, Tyson Alger, who covers the Ducks for Lookout Eugene-Springfield and runs the I-5 corridor over there in Portland, Oregon. Tyson, man, welcome back.
Hey, happy Saturday, man. How are you doing today, Max?
I'm great. You know, the Ducks don't start till next week, so part of me wishes I was watching the Ducks sometime today, but that time will come soon enough. Just got to wait one more week. But yeah, like I said, super excited to have you on the show. We're actually doing a live edition of the podcast today, so we're coming to you on the Scoop Duck on 3 YouTube channel, my social media account, at Torres Sports over on X, and then Justin's. Looks like Justin's X is linked here as well. So wherever you guys are tuned in, we're super stoked to have you guys here on the show. Thanks so much for tuning in. Let us know in the comments how you're feeling about this Oregon team and maybe week 1 matchup against Montana State. So Tyson, there's a lot of cool stuff we can get into with this year's squad and just kind of what is brewing in Eugene. It feels like I think a good place to start is just this theme of newness and kind of unknown mystery, since there were so many guys that the Ducks lost on both sides of the ball. Really, it didn't hit me until Stein said this week, I think it was, that they lost all but one starter in Poncho from last year's offense. So just broadly speaking here, how are you feeling about this squad heading into the new season?
It's kind of hard to tell how to feel about this squad, man. Like we live in this era now where you're not able to see them practice all that much, but like you do have like the base level of knowledge of like the recruiting rankings and like the overall talent in the program. So it's a weird Oregon season in the sense of we don't really know exactly like who all the guys are going to be that we're going to be talking about 4 or 5 weeks from now in terms of like difference makers and maybe like surprises and that sort of thing. But I think the thing that I'm like most interested about this season is last year you had a team that like the expectations were essentially to do what they did, if not win the national title. You had one of the most experienced quarterbacks in college football. You had experience at wide receiver. You had experience on defense, and the fact that they ended up going 13-1 kind of felt like a punch in the gut by the end of the year, mainly because of the way the Ohio State game went in the Rose Bowl. But like that was the level of expectation for that team. And with this year's team, like I don't think people are sitting here going like the Ducks must go 12-0 for this to be a successful year. And I don't think they're going to go 12-0 either. They have so many new guys on this team that like there are going to be some bumps and bruises along the way. But I'm just so intrigued to see kind of the proof of concept from Dan Lanning. This is 4 years of recruiting that has been built up onto this roster. Like, yes, they still utilize the transfer portal like they have been, but like I really do feel like it's to more kind of garnish things than it is to like build a foundation. And I just want to see what this year and like what this like true vision of like Dan Lanning really looks like. I know like Dante is still technically a transfer at quarterback, but he's a guy that's been within the system. It's a guy that they promoted from within. And so I'm looking at this Oregon season as one where it's like I think you're going to be able to enjoy some of the highs maybe better than last year, just because like there's not that like of course you're supposed to do that expectation to it. But like I also don't want to put a cap on this group either. Like just because we haven't seen these guys doesn't mean they can't be really good. And when you look at the overall like depth of the 2 deep and the talent across the roster, yeah, like maybe they take some bumps and bruises at the start of the year, but like the one thing that we learned last year more than anything is it matters way more how you're playing at the end of the year when you're a cohesive group and like you're playing with momentum than it does at the start of the season.
And this is a group that is potentially as talented a team as we've ever seen at Oregon. Like I'm not sure, what you're hearing in your conversations, but like that's some of the sentiment that I get coming out of my end, speaking kind of with some sources out there in Eugene. And this is kind of a year, I feel like, where you said like proof of vision for Lanning. Like everything that he's been working on and the staff's been working on behind the scenes from a personnel standpoint is going to be put to the test this year, which is kind of the part of the reason that I say it's a little bit of a prove it year for Lanning.
Right.
Not in the sense of, is Dan Lanning a good coach? We know he's a good coach at this point, but it's like, okay, you're tampering down the transfer portal numbers and you're betting more on the homegrown guys, the guys you have internally. And this will tell us this year, can that talent go from being just that talent to depth, to starters, to regular contributors and household names? And I think that's really where a majority of my excitement kind of stems from, seeing that I do enjoy covering recruiting quite a bit. So there's names that I know about and I've heard of, but maybe the casual Oregon fan is like, oh, wait, who's that guy? I haven't heard of him before. Or what's he been doing behind the scenes?
Well, I feel like Oregon is almost like a victim of its own success right now in the recruiting game, because if this were 10 years ago and you had a handful of like redshirt freshmen or sophomores who were 4 or 5 stars that were coming into the roster or competing for positions, we would know all their names because those guys were kind of outliers at Oregon 10 years ago. It was, the whole roster wasn't made up of 4 or 5 stars like it is now. And so, fast forward to now, where it seems like every year the Ducks are stacking best ever recruiting class upon best ever recruiting class. I don't feel like fans necessarily know all the names of like the 4-star guys who have maybe been on the bottom of the roster, who weren't like necessarily the guys who came in as true freshmen and earned playing time right away and like became like a known name. But it's like they have so much talent coming up through the system, more than they ever have in the past, that like there's going to be some guys where you're like, oh, who was that guy? And then you go and look up and it's like, oh, shoot, he was like a top 150 player in the country. Like, of course he's good. So like, I think that's where it's pretty a cool spot where the Ducks are in right now, because it's just like the floor keeps raising, like I feel like the ceiling is always going to be pretty variable, especially in like this day and age in college football, where you play in a conference where, there are other teams that are just as potent as the Ducks are in the offseason and on the recruiting trail. But yeah, like it's just, the team has gotten to a point where they have multiple dudes that can compete for spots and starting positions and contributing positions. And like, it's just really fun to watch, because, 10 years ago, I felt like Oregon's like ones were as good as anybody in the country. But if somebody got hurt or somebody like missed a game or had to come out, like that's when you really saw the kind of the discrepancy between the Ducks and maybe like those top 10 teams in the country. And that's just not the case anymore.
And that's where the true test is really going to lie, I feel like, is how deep is your too deep? Like that's been the goal, I feel like I've heard from various coaches on the staff that have spoken for the last couple of years, is like, we are going for that too deep, where one of your guys can get hurt and then the next guy you bring in is just as good. We're talking about like your Alabamas of old, where it's like you had multiple future first round draft picks that weren't even starters at one point, or they started just a small sample size of games and they end up getting drafted, which just speaks to like the ridiculous level of talent that you have. And then now for Oregon, like you're seeing more guys every year. Like I just finished writing a piece for Scoop Duck this morning about it, talking about how Lanning is expecting true freshmen to contribute this year. And they signed a number 4 class last year in the 2025 cycle. And now we're hearing buzz at a fall camp about Brandon Finney Jr. and Naeem Offord, like true freshmen. Decorium Moore, like he's like as well documented, I feel like, as any guy in the true freshman bunch. But we're seeing more guys every year. They're getting on the field not because that's their best guy. Like we just have to put you out there. You're what we have. It's because they're so immensely talented that they're coming in and they're pushing returning starters or veterans in some instances for real snaps.
And that's super impressive to me, because again, my first year covering the Ducks was the 2014 season, and you saw like a handful of true freshmen then like come in and make an impact right away. It was Royce Freeman, it was Charles Nelson, it was guys that were like, if you were good enough, you could get on the field. Back then, I just felt like you didn't have to be better than a whole lot of other players. Like if you were a really good true freshman, there just wasn't a whole lot of depth for you to beat out. Whereas now it's like, if you're coming in as a true freshman, like, yeah, you might be a 5-star, but like the guys you have to beat out were last year's 5 stars or like 4 stars from 2 years ago. Like I think it's so much harder for freshmen to get on the field now with the depth that the Ducks have, but it's like a true testament to how good of some of these stars that the Ducks are bringing in, that a guy like a DeCorian Moore can be, one of the more hyped up freshmen in the country as you're coming into the season. And it's a guy who doesn't have a single college football rep, and he's going to be taking throws from a quarterback who is breaking himself in too. So I just kind of think that shows like the types of waters the Ducks are swimming in when it comes into like the top level talent that they're able to bring in as freshmen.
One of the position groups that I want to focus on here a little bit, Tyson, that I think has as much talent as any on the team, but still just feels like a cloudy mystery, right? Like what's behind this door? We don't know yet. It's the defensive line. And I think it's so interesting to me because you have some experience in that room, right? Barrett Alexander is kind of the one that has probably seen the most college snaps, I want to say. But Amari Washington has been kind of the talk of that interior group, at least. And now it feels like Oregon stepping into a season with Tony Tuioti where it's like, you've recruited the defensive line, like you have multiple SEC caliber guys in that room. And like, if there's one position we know Lanning loves to prioritize, it's the defensive line. And now you head into the year, you have someone like a former 5-star in Elijah Rushing who redshirted last year. Like, I don't think enough people are talking about how much of a luxury that was, where other teams would be like, you're a 5-star, you're seeing the field right away. Like, we'll just take whatever happens with that. And then Blake Purchase is one of the budding stars in that edge room as well. And he redshirted last season after seeing a lot of the field in 2023. So that group just feels like it has such a high ceiling, maybe a little bit of an uncertain floor, but my God, that ceiling feels like it's endless to me.
And like it's such a nice blend between like size and like athleticism too. Like I'm stoked to see what like Blake Purchase does this season, but like coming off the edge. But then the first two guys you talked about between like Bear Alexander and Amari Washington, what is that, like 650 pounds of combined defensive tackle, like right up the middle there. Like we've seen just how effective like having just like a disruptor up the middle can be for the Ducks. I mean, like last year, Derek Harmon came in as maybe one of the more not undervalued, but maybe overlooked transfer portal additions for the Ducks because they brought in some bigger names, and he ended up being pretty good for them last year. Like that makes a difference, especially when you're playing against these big old offensive lines in the Big Ten. I'm very high on Oregon's front seven, like altogether. I mean, like you throw in Mateo there. I think Tatum is one of the more underrated players in the country. I mean, like the guy's a TFL machine. He gets into the backfield. He disrupts. Like, yes, he hasn't put up like the double-digit sack numbers quite yet, like Mateo has. But like, I just think that he's one of those guys where if you focus on other people, like he can really mess up your game if you haven't taken him into account. So again, it's another one of those things where like, yeah, there's a lot of kind of some new pieces patched together. You did a little portal in again, but if someone like Bear Alexander can play to the potential that a lot of people have believed in him to have, I know he's bounced around and hasn't quite been as effective as maybe his initial ranking came out. But if that dude can like be close to what they think he can, like I think that's going to be a massive game changer for the Ducks. I think they could just have a completely disruptive defensive line.
And that disruption, I think you would probably say starts on the interior, but like the edge guys that they have, it's not like a crazy deep room from a numbers perspective. Like maybe it's a little top heavy, but the talent in that room is just insane. Like I fully expect Mateo and Tatum to be your two starting edges, right? But then you're turning to a guy like Elijah Rushing, who we've talked about, and he was highlighted recently in the Under Construction documentary series that the Ducks are dropping, which has just been absolutely phenomenal, Tyson. I mean, I wrote about this on our message boards the other day, talking with our subscribers just about like, practice is closed to the media. So like, we're not even getting like walk-up pictures or like, it was already pretty minimal, but like, we don't even get that. So for them to kind of sprinkle in these documentary series updates, I think it definitely helps fill you up a little bit as a reporter.
It does. I think they're too good at them though. So like that's made it easier for them to be like, you know what, like we're showing you everything behind the scenes anyways with our docu-series. We don't need to give you like that practice access. Like not that like I've always been in the camp that like I don't think we learned a whole lot when we got those 15 minutes of stretching sessions. Like I think that
No,
was
never. I mean,
I
yeah,
think that was a I think that was a very controlled atmosphere, and I think it made it real easy for people to make inferences about what was going on. Where really we're you know we don't know, but it's pretty incredible, like watching like how quickly they turn those videos around, the production value to them, and then uh like I want to know like where all the unused footage from the Rose Bowl went, because if they would have won that game, like
totally.
they probably had somebody up in the blimp, right? Like there's probably hundreds of hours of footage that they weren't able to use, but that's kind of what's impressive about what they've been able to build is like they have the luxury to basically go all out for something, and if it doesn't quite work, they're like, all right, we're not going to use this one, we're going to move on to the next thing. Like their media staff for that is probably larger than any newsroom in the entire state.
And the access is so cool to me because it gives us more than like you were talking about, right? Like there's the small glimpse of the stretching sessions, and then like the first period of individual drills. Like it was so rare when I was in Eugene, at least, to see live competitive reps. Like it happened once. I think I was there once under landing when it happened, and I was like looking around, like, are we supposed to be here right now? Like,
Yeah.
do they know that we're here? So that was just awesome. And then now, but like we're kind of at like a fan perspective where it's like, oh, you see how ripped this guy looks in the offseason workouts? Like he's going to be a beast. But then it's like you don't even see him on the field maybe because you just don't actually know what's happening. But those practice snippets give us just a really good glimpse of what truly is happening behind the scenes. And it's so interesting because Lanning is looking over every second that's coming out and saying, okay, do I really want to show that? So for him, I think to show some of those clips gives you maybe some sense of confidence in like, yeah, I'm comfortable showing that because I think he's going to be a guy that needs to be talked about more.
See, that's where I get way too lost in the weeds when I watch those, because it's the exact thing. It's there's like Lanning probably improved every single shot in that thing. It's like, okay, why did he do this? He's a competitive guy. He's a guy who won't tell us like who the starter is going to be until they run out for the stretching on game one. Like, he's not one to give things away when he doesn't have to. So I'm always curious about like, okay, like you're going to show this, like what's the purpose behind it other than just maybe he's just ultra confident this year in a bunch of certain dudes, or like at the same time too, like if you're a kid who's like really performing in practice and like they put a highlight clip of you like in that video, like that's got to be a big old momentum boost too. Like it's fascinating. Yeah.
This is what I was thinking when you were saying when we're looking at diving into the weeds with why Lanning is showing these some of these clips. If you're listening on podcast, we're showing a clip of or picture of Brian Windhurst with the why would he do that viral meme. So that's just a funny one that came to mind for me when we were talking about that, Tyson. I'm trying to think of what other groups like really stick out to me. I think for me, it's like more of the mystery kind of lies on the defense. Maybe it's because Lanning's a defensive guy and there's so much talent there and there's a lot of spots to fill in. Like even with Dante Moore presumably being the starting quarterback, a new starting quarterback and a fairly inexperienced compared to his predecessors kind of a guy. I guess am I giving like too much confidence to the offense, or maybe I'm just that interested in the defense? Like, I think you could really choose either way.
I mean, like I think the offensive line is going to be better than it was last year. I mean, like
a lot of people think that, and that was a Joe Moore Award finalist, which is so crazy to say.
Which is crazy, but having Poncho back at center and like having that stability there that they didn't. The first 2 weeks of last season, as they were kind of shifting guys around to like figure out what to do without Bedford, like that was a little bit rough, but then they figured it out from there. But like now you're starting with probably the most important guy in the middle, and just seeing some of those dudes that they got through the transfer portal. Like I've never seen a body like Isaiah World before. Like the guy's a monster, man. Like I don't see how he's going to struggle, like if you will. So I'm pretty high like on the offensive line. Like I think Mekhi Hughes is going to be pretty plug and play at running back. And if he struggles or needs a spell, like Noah Whittington's a pretty good guy to have as your number two, especially if you're in tough yardage situations and you need to truck a guy. Like I've seen Noah do that a few times. we know what we're going to get at tight end. Kenyon Sadiq, I think, is going to be one of the best offensive players in the country this season. I know wide receiver is a little up in the air. I think, if DeCorian is 85% of what people think he might be, I think the Ducks are going to be just fine there. I do think there's going to be more of a transition from, you've basically had 3 years of offense where either Tez Johnson or Troy Franklin were going to catch 80 to 85 balls. So that's going to be an adjustment, especially for an offense that for the last 3 seasons has completed like 73% of its passes. So like, Oregon's offense is missing like some muscle memory and just some familiarity. But I also think the way that like Will Stein runs his offense, like it's a very efficient machine, and I'm not worried at all about whether Dante can throw beautiful like long passes and make the big plays. As long as he can focus and be efficient with the short stuff and the stuff that moves the chains and like the stuff that got Bo Nix, the check down artist, like moniker to it. Like I think Oregon's going to be completely fine there. I do think the defense has probably the largest range of what it could be, but I think the ceiling might be better, honestly. Like I love looking at this secondary. Like I love the size in there. Like it's crazy looking at the height, like the average height of just like the cornerbacks. Like we're used to having like 5'8" to like 5'10" dudes out there, and like the Ducks could potentially start this year like 2 guys above 6 foot, and like 6 foot's kind of like the base level. And so I think that's kind of where you've really seen the difference in athlete with the recruiting that Oregon's done, or through the transfer portal. It's just like, yeah, the concession used to be is if you have really big corners, like they might be slow, they might be easier to get beat off, or they're not quite as agile. Now you're getting guys who are like 6'2" who can do like the running stuff too, and like that's pretty appetizing if you're a fan of Oregon and like really like disruptive secondary.
You got guys that are north of 6 foot and ran track in high school. Some of them at like an absolutely crazy level. And we haven't even talked about 6'5" Kingston Lopa ranging in the secondary. Like that's another dude that I think is primed for a huge year, and I think he'll just make some crazy plays just by the nature of his frame and athleticism. But maybe we can kind of wrap on a little bit more talk on the offense here, and maybe around Dante, because I think that like Will Stein said what I've been saying, I feel like all offseason is like whoever wins the starting job, like I'd be shocked, I'd be floored if it wasn't Dante at this point. That you don't need to play hero ball, like just run the offense, move the ball, keep the offense moving, distribute the ball. And then I feel like, you're going to sprinkle in some pretty crazy throws, in the mix there. Like that, like I'm hearing that he's just making throws that like regular in practice that are just like, how did he do that? How did he see that? Like that I think is going to be some of the really interesting stuff we see from Dante this year, because I've only covered him in person once when he was an All-American coming out of high school, and he was signed to UCLA. And I was looking at him just thinking like, God, I wish this guy stayed committed to Oregon, because I'd have so much to write about and so much to talk about. But the arm talent there is just crazy. I know a lot of fans were maybe a little bit rubbed the wrong way with the limited deep ball that we saw from maybe Gabriel last year, or just how often he would throw it. And I think that that's something that's going to be in Dante's bag maybe a bit more this year.
Yeah, I mean, like whether Dante has the successful season that he thinks he's going to, or that the Ducks hope he's going to have, or whether or not he struggles, like there's still going to be like 5 to 10 throws this year that are like just like beautiful highlight packages if you're just like, man, like this dude can just throw the ball like we haven't seen around here before. He knows what didn't work for him at UCLA. He turned the ball over quite a bit. Like and it didn't help that UCLA had like one of the worst offensive lines to protect him at the time, but he was just always under constant duress. He had to feel like that he had to kind of win games. And that's not how you have to win games at Oregon. Oregon's got way more talent around him. He has more talent at wide receiver. He's going to make those spectacular throws, but like, hey, if Kenyon Sadiq's open 5 yards down the field and nobody's around him, just get him the ball. Let him go do it. Let him go hurdle dudes and pick up 50 yards yak and just go down the field. Like there's so many easy options at Oregon to not have to like throw into trouble, that as long as Dante's able to do that, like I think that's going to be the biggest key for him. Because if it was just straight like highlights, if it was just straight like who is the most impressive in like a skills test, like Dante would blow the rest of Oregon's quarterbacks out of the water. I think just like the only holdup, and I'm not saying that this has been a holdup, but the only reason why they haven't like straight up named a starter is they're just making sure that he can do all the other stuff that you need to do before you get to the point where you can chuck it 80 yards down the field.
No doubt, no doubt. So it's going to be exciting to see this offense, and I think even though the wide receiver room is maybe more inexperienced than Duck fans would prefer, or maybe have become accustomed to, given how they've utilized the transfer portal in recent years, I really feel like the athletic ability and the playmaking ability could be at a level that we haven't seen in quite a while. And when you couple that with Dante maybe just getting the open man the ball and his ability to make those what kind of plays, like we saw with that corner strike to Kenyon in the in the end zone, like that makes for a dangerous offense.
Yeah, I'm more excited to watch the first like 5 games of the season than I was last year, because like last year it's just, you know, everything's building towards the Ohio State game, and then after that it's building towards, can you win the national championship or not? Like this year, I think Oregon could still be very as good as they were last year, but it's going to be fun to just see the development and just to see the story grow, and to have all this not be kind of like the end product of all these guys' careers. Like, this is Oregon building something. As I said earlier, it's kind of like the proof of concept for Dan Lanning. It's more like year 1 of like his full team, which is kind of ridiculous to say after like 4 years, or, you know,
Sure.
being in his 4th year. But like, you know, Oregon's a team that from now on conceivably should always have the window open. You know, you might have some years where guys are more experienced and you might be peaking as like start of the year number 1, but like with the base level of talent, with the continuity they've had in the coaching staff, like Oregon's always going to be around the playoff orbit. It's just a matter of like how those pieces are put together. And I'm really interested in seeing how those pieces are put together this year.
I think everybody expects Oregon to be a good or even great team, but what does the path look like to becoming that team? That's something that we're going to get to see unfold in real time, Tyson, because this team is a little bit unknown, and I think that's really going to be fun to watch. Before I let you out of here, Tyson, just give us give the folks a little bit of info as far as where they can find you. I know you're at a little bit of a new spot, like I said in the intro. So I just wanted to give you a chance to put all your stuff out there.
Yeah. So all of my Ducks content now is at lookout Eugene-Springfield.com. It's a new site they launched back in April. They're doing kind of a focus on community news and journalism, but they figured they couldn't be a Eugene publication without covering the Ducks, and so we started talking a couple of weeks ago and kind of share a vision in terms of like what we wanted to do. So I started with them like 2 weeks ago. It's been a blast so far. I haven't said corridor instead of lookout Eugene-Springfield in a press conference yet. But if for some reason there's people out there who enjoyed my soccer coverage with the Timbers on the corridor is still alive in Portland. It's just without the Duck stuff now. So I'm a little bit segmented, but the Ducks are simply just too good to be trying to go at it by myself. So I found a nice home for my writing, and really looking forward to covering this season.
Right on, man. Well, I'm glad that you found your home. Oregon fans are lucky to have you on this beat. If you guys want to find more of me, you can find me anywhere at Torres Sports. Subscribe to the Scoop Duck on through YouTube channel. Come and see us at scoopduck.com. We got a great special going right now, just $1 for your first week, and you get a year of access to The Athletic as well. So make sure you guys come and find us. Come and join the party over at scoopduck.com and share the Ducks Dish podcast anywhere you find it. But until next time, a huge thank you to Tyson for coming on, and we'll see you guys in the next episode of the Ducks Dish podcast.